So I'm going to do something a little bit controversial. I'm going to break down the different variations of Meghan's story and Harry's around their miscarriage. Now, of course, I have to be very sensitive about this situation because to some people, this is a very, very deeply traumatic experience. But I think it's incredibly important when I believe that somebody is using mental health and using this type of trauma to gain sympathy when perhaps it's not exactly true, then I do believe that this does need to be called out. So I'm going to explore this and explaining to you why I personally do not believe this story. So if you are like me, where you're sick and tired of the lies and you want to get to the truth of a situation, and sometimes it's about asking the hard questions, the difficult things that maybe other people won't cover, then this could be the channel for you. But please think about liking the video if you've enjoyed it and subscribing to the channel so you do not miss future uploads. That being said, as you're still here, welcome. Go grab your drink of choice, whatever that may be. Sit back, relax as we get into some tea with a little touch of psychology. Now, I know most of you know the spiel, you've been with me for a while, but for those of you who are new and you have no idea who I am, my name is Ems and I am a qualified UK therapist. However, this is not about therapy. This is about showing you that I can use the knowledge that I have garnered over nearly 30 years in the field of psychology, where I can explore behavior, body language, reading between the lines of kind of not just what people say, but what they don't say. And I use that to examine celebrity behaviour at the moment. And for the most part, this is about Harry and Meghan because right now they are at the forefront in the media a lot of the time. And I think the biggest thing as well for me is that they lie a lot. And what frustrates me the most is that they have used mental health to almost garner sympathy and to use that to get out of certain situations or to be a victim of certain situations. I have the utmost sympathy and empathy for somebody if they go through something traumatic. But what angers me the most is when I do believe that someone is being dishonest and they're using that as a means to, like I say, garner sympathy or to as an excuse for something, and they're lying. And so in this particular video, I wanted to explore, I know some people call it the mythcarriage. I think I have actually referred to it myself as that. Now, I understand that this is very emotive and very traumatic for some people, and I do not want to make light of that. So I want to tread very carefully with this. But at the same time, I do think, given how serious this is, that it is incredibly important to look at if Meghan and Harry are lying, how are they lying? Why do I feel they're lying? And to show kind of proof where they perhaps are lying. Because where so many women and men go through this, women obviously going through this with their bodies and how they feel losing a baby, but obviously men go through this too because they're losing a child as well. You know, I just find it so egregious when somebody does something and uses that as a means to garner sympathy. So yeah. So I've made some notes. My trusty notes, because I want to make sure that I get this right. So the first thing that flagged to me when I started looking at this was, one, why she did the sort of the op-ed in the first place with the New York Times, which was in, was it 2020? So, and in her version, the key points basically were, she said that she was at home, it was just a normal day, she was doing things with Archie, changing his diaper, she felt this sharp pain, and she says that she knew instantly she was losing the baby, and she said, you know, she dropped to the floor humming a lullaby, and this was in the op-ed. Now, I also want to add as well that I'm also going to do a second video on Harry's version, where he also states about burying a fetus. And I'm going to look at that as well, because again, I have questions, and I'm sure most of you do too. So then we have the second version, which is in the Netflix mockuseries, as I like to call it, where it says that the miscarriage happened because of stress. So this was added in. So this is almost like, to me, this was almost added in for dramatic effect, because here's the thing, when you go through, and I'm not saying everybody, but the majority of the people, especially when I've worked with people, a lot of people that have gone through this, it is ingrained in your mind. So it goes one of two ways. It is so ingrained that you remember every single detail like it was yesterday, no matter how far into the future you go, you remember this because it's so traumatic to you, and it's a big deal. Or you can go into what we call denial, and you can just almost like block it out, and you tend to then not really remember many details. So you can sort of, it's happened, but it's so fuzzy to you because your brain has blocked it out to protect you. And this is what can happen with trauma. So what's weird to me is, like I say, the different accounts. And it isn't just about what they say. It's when you build this picture around everything. So we know that they obviously left for Megxit in 2020. They moved from there to Canada. And then I think they were there in Canada for a few months before they then moved to Tyler Perry's mansion. And then they moved from there. And around June 1, I think that was when the article come out. But anyway, so in Meghan's New York op-ed, which she published in November 2020. So this is now, we've got the fact that the boy allegedly is now nearly a year and a half, nearly 18 months old, allegedly, because you know how I feel about the boy. And if you don't, please go and watch the playlist, The Children. So she writes this op-ed. And in that she says, so it's called The Losses We Share. So she describes a morning in July 2020 when she was caring for the boy. She feels a sharp cramp, drops to the floor with him in her arms, humming a lullaby to calm them both. Later then she says she's in hospital with Harry. She describes his hand as clammy, crying together, and she reflects on how common miscarriage is and how little it's spoken about. She also links the miscarriage to the broader grief of 2020 pandemic losses and frames the story as a way to encourage open conversation. Now, on the surface, nothing wrong with that. I think that there absolutely needs to be more conversation when it comes to things like this. However, I wasn't aware that we weren't. I definitely think that we talk a lot more now than when we ever used to do. And I think the way that she sort of portrays this is like it's still very taboo, which it isn't. Okay, we can always talk more, but it's certainly not as taboo as the way she's claiming it to be. But the way that she sets this up is that this was just a normal morning, that she was just going about her day. She was changing Archie's diaper. Now, bear in mind that she doesn't mention Abigail Spencer. She doesn't mention Harry until obviously then he's at the hospital. So in the Netflix docuseries, well, mockumentary as I like to call it, Meghan and Harry say the first morning that we woke up in our new home is when I miscarried. Now, they moved June 2020. So I'm a little bit, something is just off here, because straight away you're getting the fact that Meghan never mentions about this was the fact that this was, this is quite significant. If you're moving into your new home and you miscarry on the first day of moving into your new home, that would stay transfixed in your mind. It's such a significant moment that you would remember that if you're recalling the event. It's not something that you're going to forget. You would forget maybe tiny minor details, but you wouldn't forget something as significant as that. So she never mentions that in the first one. So the second one she mentions, obviously, this is what it is. And And then she says that we woke up in our new home. So again, you've got to be very careful when you look at things, because when you talk, especially if you're just generally talking, you tend to, unless you're prepared, you tend to say the truth. And you can get caught out in things. So when she says we woke up in our new home, I would generally say that she was potentially referring to recalling a memory of when they woke up in their new home. And so she's thinking of Harry, because at no point here does she say, I was alone. Harry was not there. So again, that is a significant key point that you would think about, especially given that, as we'll explore later on, Harry says he was not there when this happened. So you would then recall, well, hang on a minute, my husband wasn't there. So you would possibly recall how scary this was because you were on your own when this happened, which is what she portrays in the first one. So obviously they're talking about the new home, and then they start to talk about the stress of the legal battle, which, if you remember, she was going through the legal battle with the letter to her father, and that's a whole other thing. But what's interesting is that they don't blame the possible stress of, say, this miscarriage in moving. Now, most people know moving home is one of the most stressful things to go through. They put that even, I think, sometimes more stressful than weddings, because it's incredibly stressful. But they don't mention that. They mention the legal stress. So I think that what I believe that they're doing here is they're attempting to shift the narrative to blame the media and to blame her father, because her father was obviously included in this legal battle. But again, none of that was mentioned in the first thing that she wrote. So these things are all being added in afterwards. Like I say, they were going through a move. So, and to be fair, all of this stuff with the tabloid was her. You know, she was the one that decided to write a letter to her father when she could have called him, emailed him, texted him. But no, somehow she chose to write a letter knowing that it would, and she worded it knowing that it could get released to the press. So she purposely wrote it in a different way, knowing that it could possibly get leaked.
So here's the thing. They allegedly bought the property in Montecito 2020 June, but didn't move till July. Why would you move while you're going through this very stressful court case? Plus you're being told not to add extra stress, and then decides to do an op-ed in November, where according to her, she's still in the first trimester, so there's still a risk. Why would you put that stress onto yourself, doing an op-ed which goes public, potential backlash, after going through a miscarriage that was caused apparently through stress? That doesn't make sense. I don't believe any woman would put themselves through that after going through something else. You would be so extra careful and vigilant. It just doesn't add up.
So she, in a sense, did this herself. And then it goes on. So he says, but then he can't definitively prove the press caused it. Do we absolutely know? Of course not. But he points to stress, lack of sleep, the timing, how many weeks in she was. So she was already then apparently weeks in. So then you're looking at the fact that she allegedly got pregnant somewhere early, say, I don't know what, June something. So no stress to the fact that they'd just done Megxit, and then they'd gone from Megxit, so from the UK to Canada, and then from Canada to Tyler Perry's house, and then from Tyler Perry's house to the Montecito mansion, allegedly. But none of those were a factor in a build-up of stress. It was the legal battle with her father and the mail that was the problem. Right, okay. Then you also then have Abigail Spencer pops in, and she says she recalls the moment when the couple were moving into the house. So now this is not the morning of, they were moving in. So, okay, this could then, with wording, could be going to, this was the first morning in the new house. So she says, when the couple were moving into the new house, she noticed Meghan holding Archie, having a lot of pain as she showed her the house. Right. So then we go back to the New York. So hang on a minute. So in the New York, she was there on her own, holding Archie. She just changed his diaper, picking up a crayon, you know, all of those things, singing a lullaby. Then we go to the Netflix mockumentary where it's a slightly different variation of they just moved into their new home. So the first one was like an every normal day, doing all of these things. And then the second one was that they just moved in. And then you have Abigail that sort of chimes in. And again, like I say, no mention of Abigail, no mention of really of Harry, just that he was sort of supportive after the fact. Then we have Abigail. I believe that Abigail was put in the mockumentary for this specific thing. For some reason, and I don't know why, Abigail seems to want to go along with the lie. Because again, this is a very significant thing. They've just woken up in the morning, apparently, and she's going about doing something, but then the next thing we have, Abigail has turned up to help and is being shown around the new house and then recalls her dropping, you know, sort of being in pain. So where's this changing Archie's diaper, dropping to the floor, singing a lullaby? How is she managing to do all of that whilst potentially showing Abigail around this new house? But again, all of this was omitted in the first op-ed. Then you have Harry's version. He talks about being away at work. So, but when I've researched and Googled and asked, there's nothing, now I'm not saying he wasn't away, but there's nothing reported of him being away around this time. There's no official diary, nothing, there's no photographs of him being somewhere, there's no diary, anything in the royal diary of him doing stuff. And I would find that very odd, respectfully I would, of this is the first morning, you're apparently in your new home, you have apparently a young son, and your wife is newly pregnant. Now, let's also bear in mind that back when Meghan was back in the UK and she was around 5 to 6 months pregnant with the alleged boy, she wanted to unalive herself because of the stress and the pressure. So when you add these factors in, you would think that they would be a little bit more cautious, or certainly Harry would, on the first day of their new home, of not being away so she doesn't deal with everything by herself. But that's not the case. So already we're seeing different versions of events. So then Harry's one, so then talks about being, like I say, being away. And of course, Meghan talks about when they're at the hospital, holding hands, crying, you know, all of that. And then which I will get into, Harry then talks about burying a tiny package, the lost unborn child, in a secret place under a banyan tree. He digs a hole with his bare hands and buries it. Don't even get me started. I am definitely doing a video on this because I'm just not buying it. Which, like I say, well, I'll go into more. I know pretty much, in fact, I will say, in nearly every single case when I have spoken to a family, a woman who has gone through a miscarriage, myself included, you name the child, and they don't seem to talk about it as if this is a child. In Meghan's essay, she doesn't even mention the press. She talks about the pandemic. She talks about other aspects. So, but again, missing out huge chunks of things if you're going to believe everything that they supposedly have gone through. And so I can understand why people feel that there's too many inconsistencies. And I agree, because in my opinion, as I've said before, when you go through something so significant, so traumatic, you either remember everything pretty much, especially the big moments, in a sense, that are significant. Like if this was the first morning in their home, you would remember that. You would remember whether your husband was there or he wasn't there, because in Harry's version, he's away working. She never mentions that. You would remember if your friend was there. Never mentions that. The only time that's mentioned is when Abigail talks about it in the mockuseries. So you then have this calling into question everything. Because not only that, so she also writes this in November. So this is quite early on, apparently after the that it happened, allegedly. Because you're talking about this happening, say, July. And then she seems to fall pregnant incredibly quickly, because we then have the girl allegedly born in June. Now, okay, it is not completely impossible, but the body needs time to heal. And when your body goes through an extreme trauma this way, it needs time to heal. And I can absolutely tell you, in most cases, women are certainly not thinking about having sexual relations with their husband so quickly after. Now, okay, they might feel that they want a child, and so they want to go and certainly have a child, but generally your body does need time. And it obviously is dependent on other people, we're all different. But generally it's at least a weeks, month maybe. So you're then looking at, so she loses she allegedly loses this child. And then, if you're going to have a bit of time to heal, say August, September, then you've got October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. So literally on the minute that she feels that she's healed, that she's fallen pregnant straight away. Now, okay, is this impossible? No. But the fact that she is the age that she's classed as a high-risk pregnancy. The fact that she's also miscarried, allegedly, would give her even more reason to be a high-risk pregnancy. There's no mention of the fact that she wanted to unalive herself, and not just unalive herself, but unalive her unborn child. This again was skipped by the media. No one mentioned that. No one queried whether this was even a thing. It was just like poof, gone. No one questioned that she then went out to Cirque du Soleil that evening, grinning like a Cheshire cat. And in fact, if anything, I've said before that Harry looked devastated in the photograph. She didn't, but yet she's saying things like, when the lights went down, I sobbed. When? When did you, because I'm sorry, did you have a makeup team down there that were doing your makeup quickly but in between sobs? Because when the lights were on, her makeup looked like there was no streaks, no mascara. I'm sorry, but when I cry, I look like my head's flushed down a toilet. I'm panda eyes. I'm crying. I'm red-faced, puffy, very unattractive. It's an ugly cry. It's a cry. But even if I was trying to control it, you would still see it. There's nothing. And I think the reason being is that because she knows that when it comes to mental health, when it comes to things like this, when it comes to wanting to unalive yourself, wanting to unalive your unborn child because apparently things are so desperately bad for you, then you have, like I say, these different variations of this miscarriage story. The media are terrified to question, terrified to call her out on this and ask the hard questions. Like, why are you so inconsistent? Why did you feel the need to write something like a Mills and Boons novel the way that she wrote that op-ed, which I believe she did for attention? I'm sorry, but I think that she saw that Chrissy Teigen got attention for doing what she did. And I think she tried to do the same thing. And the difference being is that when you lie, it is very hard to keep up with your lies. And especially when you're involving other people like Dimbo Harry, who seems to blow it, basically. So he's basically saying that he was away working. Yet there's nothing. There's no footage that, and we know how public they are. Now, there is a photograph of them apparently coming out of a Beverly Hills hospital, and I put the picture up here. But again, this was around July 2020 when this supposedly happened. So people are linking this. But I don't know. Again, I mean, could they have been there for something else? And they just use that picture. Yeah, of course. I'm just not buying it, especially because we were also in lockdowns around this time. So in my opinion, why was Abigail Spencer turning up to the place in the first place? What, different rules apply? Again, nobody called them out. If we're in lockdown and she's not in your bubble because she's not family, so how was she allowed to just turn up and start, having a bit of a show around in your new place? So no one queried that. There's lots of things that people were just like, well, hang on a minute. How is it that, you've got Gary, why not? Might as well call him Gary. Harry saying that he's taking gas and air, when he's in the hospital. I don't think this was actually with the miscarriage, but I think was this with the alleged birth of Lily. And it's like some of these weird things, like I say, that him taking the fetus and burying it, like I said, and I will do that in more detail because it just doesn't add up. And so then you say, if you're lying about this, because I do believe that she is, and I know that seems, especially given my background, that is a challenging thing to say. But I also have my own personal opinions and I trust my instincts, and my instincts are telling me that she lied about this. Now, do I think that she's used this story probably at some point in their this situation in their relationship? Yeah, I do. And unfortunately, and I hate to say this but we'd be pretty naive if we didn't know that there are women, as much as there are men, that can be manipulative and can do egregious and terrible things to get what they want. And is it possible that she then pretended to go through this? Yeah, I absolutely do believe so, because like I've said before, I believe that she is a malignant narcissist. And I do feel that there's sociopathy and possible psychopathy. And again, just my personal opinions, not a diagnosis, just what I have seen with my own eyes and heard with my own ears. So is that conceivably possible that she's concocted something to, perhaps while Harry was away, and pretended? Yeah. And so then to some degree, maybe Harry has just kind of gone along with some things because he's not smart. And so it is very possible that when you've got Doria and you've got maybe Abigail and they're all in on it, that he's going to believe her. Now, the question would be also the hospital thing. So that to me then is when Harry then is also lying. So he's got to kind of go along with it. But again, if Meghan has sort of created this, I don't want to go to the hospital because, I just, because of the paps and I just feel humiliated. Again, he's possibly going to go along with that because he doesn't know all the ins and outs of it all. And also because Doria has supposed got knowledge, so he's probably going to believe what she says. Now, again, I know this could seem a bit conspiracy theories, but I've been around the world long enough to know that people are capable of the most horrendous things to get what they want. And I'm going to call her out. I hope it doesn't get me in trouble, but I am going to call her out. I'm going to call her out and say that she's lying in this. And, when I look at it all, it just doesn't track to me. It just doesn't track. You do not have 3 or 4 different varying stories that are different. Adding people in, taking people away, you just don't. You know, this is not amnesia. Like I say, you either know it down to the finest detail because it's so traumatic you remember it, or you block it out, in which case you don't want to talk about it. It's too traumatic. When you're doing what she's done or they've done, when they've openly spoken about it in the way that they have, it doesn't vary to such a degree if it's the truth. It just doesn't, in my opinion. And if this is the truth and I'm wrong, then I will say that they're probably the anomaly in how I've experienced people dealing with a trauma such as losing a child. And another thing I will add, there are certain things when they've spoken after this, when they've spoken in Oprah and other things like that. And actually, what was it that they said in Oprah? So when they spoke on Oprah in 2021, in the Oprah interview, Meghan describes the miscarriage as something Harry walked in on, with Meghan collapsing and saying she was losing the baby. Yeah, I forgot that one. I've just gone down my notes. So there you go. Huge, huge, huge lie. Harry in Spare says he was away working. In Oprah, she says he walked in on it. Now, I wonder, remember when I just said just now that I think that she has done this? Was that the moment? Was that the moment when she orchestrated a fake and he walked in on it thinking it was real? That's interesting to me. Because, and then like I say, and then in another version, she was showing Abigail Spencer, about to show Abigail Spencer around the house. So, which is it? Like I say, it's too contrasting. And the fact is, again, as I have said before, till I'm blue in the face, possibly, until the fact that you guys are sick of me saying it, why has the media or anyone not called her out for these completely different stories? You cannot make up Harry walking in on your miscarriage and you saying we're losing the baby to I'm holding Archie, Harry's not there, to Abigail Spencer's there and she's holding Archie, then Harry's away at work. No, I'm sorry. No, don't buy it. Why? Because you did it for sympathy. You did it to try and change the narrative and get people on your side because you knew that you were being called out for things and the negative press everyone was being negative about you. And that's what she does. I think that's what she does. Like she did it with the unaliving myself. Again, tried to get sympathy. But the thing is we're not buying it. And I'm sorry, but maybe, you know, and someone in my field, and like I say, I know that this can be difficult to say, but I'm going to say it. She lied. Harry lied. I think maybe he was potentially believing some of it, but there is a certain point when he would have been in on a lie, and that's the hospital part, which, like I say, I'm going to get to in a second video. I also hear you. I know a lot of you have been emailing me about the video I said about the children. Trust me, it's coming. I will do another recap on this because there has been some things I've got in regards to the boy. I really want to keep calling these two out. I understand that you are sick of them. I get it. But to me, it is incredibly important that channels that are like mine, that try to get to the truth, keep going, not to let them censor us. So please, please keep us going. So like the video, share, subscribe, hype if you can, if the option is there and you've got a spare hype, please, please give me a hype. I'd appreciate it. All of the links are below. There's a little yellow icon above the subscribe button. If you click on that, that takes you to the My Coffee page. I hope you've had a great weekend. And I will see you in the next video. Stay amazing. And remember that I love you, I appreciate you, and most of all, I respect you. Take care. Bye-bye. Mwah.